Condition-wise, this is probably one of the worst engines I've ever worked on, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. But before I do that, I'll give you guys a quick backstory on it. A couple of weeks ago, I pulled a 1979 Renault R5 out of a barn to bring it back to life. Little did I know, this car has been sitting for over 20 years, and the previous owner was wrenching on this car's engine before me. The Renault car has just over 42,000 kilometers on the odometer, and the body seems pretty solid. So I'm not exactly sure what went wrong with this car or with this drivetrain in specific. So let's try and figure that out in today's video. Before I remove this 4-cylinder engine from the transmission, I'll give you guys an overview of how bad this actually looks like. On the left of this engine, I also have this cylinder head, and this has already been removed from the engine block by the previous owner, so I have nothing to do with this. Since the cylinder head was removed from this engine block, a lot of debris piled up within this engine over the years. Inside of the cylinder liners, there was debris. In between the cylinder liners, in the coolant passages, there was debris. And even within this pocket where the cam followers are. With so much debris, there was probably a lot of moisture that got trapped within this engine, and that's why the cylinder liners don't look too healthy right now. With so much moisture trapped within the engine, something must have seized. I tried to turn it over by hand on the camshaft pulley, which is opposite to the timing chain, but it does not want to move. So we're gonna have to free this engine up somehow, and I hope I don't break anything. Making some serious progress on the disassembly of this Renault R5 engine. Right now, I just removed the timing chain tensioner, and I first thought this camshaft was seized, but I'm pretty lucky because it's not. As you can see, the camshaft does turn a couple degree, obviously, since the timing chain is still on there and it's hooked up to the crankshaft, it won't spin over freely. So the camshaft isn't seized, and I'm really happy about that. Next up, I'm gonna remove the sprocket on the camshaft. Hopefully everything will slide off easily in order for me to also remove the timing chain. Now this right here is basically a bare engine block. I removed all the major components and it is just one big block. It is very dirty and it is very grimy, so I will be cleaning this up with some soapy water or some chemicals, whatever works best. After that, I will probably laser clean this engine block so I can apply a fresh coat of paint once I'm ready for the rebuild. Now over here, you'll also notice there is a very big cavity on the top end where the cylinders are actually located, and that is the main coolant passageway. Now that's not just for the coolant passageway, because there are exactly 4 cylinders that have to be placed within this area. And down below, we also have exactly 4 very accurate machined steps, and those will accommodate 4 wet liners, or what I would call 4 wet sleeves. Nowadays, you can find these wet liners on most heavy duty equipment, especially some very big trucks like inline 6 cylinders on semi trucks. This is very common, but Renault decided to do this for a small 4-cylinder engine, which was probably one of their most successful engines ever. Now, when we look at this, all it basically is a cast cylinder bored to spec, and also on the bottom end of this cylinder, we have a shoulder to accommodate a little seal that goes up against the engine block on the very bottom. The top end will obviously be sealed off with our head gasket, and that also goes up against the engine block. There's one thing that I didn't do just yet, and that is to remove the pistons within the cylinder liners, or the wet sleeves, whatever you'd like to call them. Now the piston is still hooked up to the connecting rod via the wrist pin, and what I did overnight is I actually applied oil on the inside of this bore, because the only way you'll get this connecting rod out is if you push the piston downwards. So that's the only way you can take it out. Now what I did overnight is I put oil in the back, and that actually penetrated through to the front of the piston, and as you guys can see, there's actually oil on the front. Now all these pistons were pretty tight and I couldn't move them whatsoever, but as you guys can see, this piston actually rotates now, so that means it's basically free. So I'm going to remove the pistons from the liners, we'll see how the condition looks like, and then I'll also share with you guys some other parts that I have over here on this table. Now I'm going to talk about most of the parts I removed from the engine block, and I'll start with the crankshaft right away. You'll notice there is some surface rust on this crankshaft, and that's because the previous owner removed the engine block from this for some reason, and this was just exposed to the elements, and that's why there is surface rust over here. The journals, on the other hand, look very healthy. The mains look really good. We have exactly 5 main journals, and we also have 4 connecting rod journals, obviously, since this is a 4-cylinder engine. But now over here, the crankshaft doesn't really concern me whatsoever. Even the sprocket looks pretty good, but the bearings look kind of weird, especially if we take number 2, which is the main bearing. That looks really bad, or at least in my opinion. Now, if we come over here to the crankshaft, number 2 is from the flywheel side. This journal looks really healthy, and there's nothing really on this journal, so I'm not really sure what would cause so much wear on the bearing surface. That's actually a really deep groove. I'm not sure if the camera will pick it up, but all of them have a little groove right there, right there, right there, right there, and a little bit on number 1. So I'm not exactly sure what caused that. Maybe there was something in the oil, but then again, I couldn't check it because the oil pan was removed. Since I will be installing brand new bearings, or at least because I've seen this, it doesn't concern me too much, and that will be a pretty easy fix, I would say. Now over here on the piston side of things, I just removed these from the wet liners. I was able to remove number 1, number 2, and number 4. Number 3 is still over there because it still seems to be very solid. And I'm gonna just leave it one more night, soaking with some oil. Maybe I'll add some other penetrating fluid in there just to make sure it loosens up. But as you can see down below, the pistons do not look very healthy. On each piston, or at least these 3 that I have down below, you will see some scoring, especially right here. And that's pretty much on the height of this little bore that supplies oil to the oil ring. Now, the oil ring on number 1 was only half of a ring. I'm not sure where the other half went. As I pulled it out, there was only half a ring in there. So I'm not exactly sure where the other half is. That's kind of weird. But number 2 and number 3 have the exact same scoring marks. As you will see, there's pretty much a scoring mark right there. There's nothing right here. That seems pretty healthy. But then on the other side, we have some major scoring. Number 4, scoring, 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 and scoring. I thought first the scoring was from this on the top. As you can see, there's a little bit of debris right there. And maybe somebody would have started it or tried to start it in this condition. And that would cause the scoring, but it's actually on each piston. So I'm not exactly sure what caused that. Maybe there was a burr on this bore. That could have been it, or maybe not enough oil. I'm really not sure about this scoring because everything else on the piston looks very healthy, especially on the biggest surface of the piston, which is 90 degree to the wrist pin most of the time. Now over here on the camshaft, you'll notice this was the bearing, most outer bearing on the outside, because this bearing is on the inside of the engine block, and this radial bearing actually holds the camshaft or supports it about 2 inches right here to accommodate the pulley which goes on the most outer point of this camshaft. The pulley will drive the water pump and the alternator to obviously power other things. Now down below, if we look at the lobes, the camshaft is still very healthy. First, I thought the camshaft was seized because the tappets looked very bad, especially from the top. So I thought the camshaft would have been seized, but the camshaft is very healthy. This is the bearing surface, and it looks like new, and I'm really happy about that. This gear is for the distributor. We have some other bearings. We have the lobes. If you look at the lobes up closely, they wouldn't even need a polish because they look like brand new. So I'm really happy with that. The bearing surfaces on the camshaft look great. The lobes look great. And I'll probably just be touching this up and it's ready to go again. Now over here we have the cam followers or tappets, whatever you'd like to call them. There's a little bit of wear on them, but I'm not exactly sure if that's something that has to be addressed. I will be measuring this and the bore inside of the engine block to know exactly if these have to be replaced or if that even has to be bored out. So we're going to see about that. Obviously, as you can tell, there's a lot of cleaning to do on the tappets, crankshaft, camshaft, everything has to be cleaned up. This area, pistons and sleeves, is a bigger topic, and bearings is obviously something that you can just replace because they still offer these online for sale. And once I do this engine, it will receive a brand new seal and gasket kit, so that's not a problem either. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned I'd like to figure out what went wrong with this engine. Now, the engine block itself looks nasty. It was probably leaking on each seal and on each gasket. But on the other hand, the internals look actually pretty healthy, like the crankshaft and even the camshaft. Since I don't have much history on the car or the drivetrain in specific, I would lean towards a piston or a piston ring failure or even issue. Even on piston number 1, the oil ring is only partially there. I'm not exactly sure where the other half went. I didn't find it anywhere in the shop, and it's probably nowhere in the car. So I'm not sure who installed piston number 1 into that sleeve, but the oil ring is only halfway there. So that's obviously not a good sign. Now I'm leaning towards one more little aspect of this engine, but I can't be sure of this whatsoever because you can only see this while the engine is running. If there would be any coolant mixed in with the oil, that would be caused by the little gasket that actually sits up against the shoulder of the liner and that goes up against the engine block. If that paper gasket lets go, or if that paper gasket is too old and it's just brittle, it'll let coolant into your engine oil, and once your engine oil is supplied throughout your engine, it'll actually burn the coolant and oil mixture, causing white smoke out of your muffler. Since I've never heard this engine running or I've never seen it running, I can only assume that could have happened, and that's another reason why you'd want to take the complete engine apart to replace those gaskets. And that's pretty much it. If you guys enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button down below. It helps this video reach more people, but it also helps my channel grow a little bit. That way people can find these videos much quicker on YouTube. If you guys have any questions, drop a comment down below. I'll try my best to reply to everybody, and that's what I usually do. It just takes a little bit longer, especially if there's a lot of comments every day. So with that said, I'm gonna get some work done behind the scenes, and I'll see you guys in an upcoming video.